this film have socially redeeming value?
Oh, I certainly hope so, Sam. Sorry about that. Oh, hi, Biggie.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your Star Wars Weekend's host, a man with the freakish vocal range and 3 first names, James Arnold Taylor.
What about you? You ready over here? Who's more ready? Over here? How about back there? My name is James Arnold Taylor, and it is a true honor to be able to be here right now and do what we're about to do. So I could go on and on, but I think we got to get to it, right? Yeah! We got to get to this show. A conversation with Frank Oz. Ladies and gentlemen, before we bring him out, let's look at him in action. Take a look.
Be scared.
Teaching Bernice here how to play checkers. Your move, Bernice. Bernice?
Yes, now to our story.
Big time showbiz. Waka waka waka.
Take the laughs when you can get them.
Hi there, Mr. Oz. Are you by chance in relation to Frank Oz?
No.
Well.
Trying to make a movie, you not a film?
Action.
He's never gone!
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
I'm not looking for a friend. I'm looking for a Jedi Master.
Why wish you become Jedi? Use the Force. Get me by my size, do you? When 900 years old you reach, look as good you or not. Do not. There is no try. You must feel the Force around you.
It's exciting. It's very, very exciting for all of us to have you here at Star Wars Weekend, sir. Yeah.
How many of you were planning to come here and it happened to be that I'm here?
Anybody?
Yeah. How many of you came here not because of me? I thank you very much, because that's a lot of energy on your part, a lot of time and money.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. It was very good of you guys. Thank you.
Yeah. So we better make it worth it, boy. I'm telling you. Oh man, is this your first time at Disney World?
No, I've been here several times. As a matter of fact, once we were here for about a month when we shot a special, The Muppets at Disney World, many years ago.
Man, well, I gotta tell you, so we have so many questions, we have so much to cover, and of course we'll be doing this over the next 3 days as well. And we can cover a lot of ground, but to really make sure that they all get information and to make sure that I look good in front of the folks at Disney, the most important thing, let's go back a little history.
I'm gonna move my chair a little bit. They can't see.
You can't see there?
I
Sure.
can see my
You
shoulder.
can do whatever you want to do.
There you go.
There it is. That's better. Yes. Frank Oz on display. He'll be here for the next half hour. But history-wise, you were born in England.
I was.
And then you came here around 5 years old or so?
Yes.
And Oz is not entirely your name.
No, my real name is Osnowitz, and I'm very proud of it. I have it in my passport. My children are Osnowitz. But when I was in school, my brother was called Big Oz, and I was called Little Oz. And when we were doing a TV show, when I came to New York in 1963, when the star introduced me, he couldn't pronounce Osnowitz. So somebody suggested Oz, and that turned out to be that.
It's stuck. And it's been very cool ever since.
It's nice.
But then, so your parents were puppeteers.
It was their hobby.
It was their hobby, okay. And so you just kind of naturally had that ability and you took it on, but
I don't know if I had that ability or not. I know, I guess I wanted to express myself in some way. I think it was a way of pleasing my parents, but also I was about 11 years old, 12 years old, and for those of you who were like me, who had low self-esteem, I was too scared to be myself. And what it did, it gave me an avenue to express myself, but with this. And so if people rejected this, they weren't rejecting me. And so I think this of course I didn't realize until much later in life, but I realized that's probably why I did it, because I think a lot of us have, when you're younger, have self-esteem problems, which is a shame, because we're all great.
yeah.
But that I think is what happened, and then as a result of doing it more, then I think I got into the situation where I got pretty good at it.
So 11 and 12 years old, Children's Fairyland was the
Yeah, there's a park in in Oakland, California called Children's Fairyland. As a matter of fact, Walt Disney came to visit Children's Fairyland before he built Disneyland.
Is that right?
Yeah, because he was just studying different parks, and that was there beforehand.
So tell me about this porcupine marionette, though.
Where did you get that from?
Well, you still don't get the Jedi thing. do
Okay,
you?
there were. When I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I was kind of apprenticing at this puppet theater in Oakland, California at Children's Fairyland. And it was 3 shows a day, but marionettes, string puppets. And I think I built a porcupine, which is the dumbest thing you could possibly do, with strings. Because it just walks like 3 inches and all the strings are tangled in the, So, but I was young.
Yeah, but you did it. It was good. But then at 17, you met a gentleman that really, I think it's fair to say, changed your life.
Oh, completely changed my life, yeah. I was 17 and there were these puppet conferences. I never went to them. But this one had a contest, when I was there, I won the contest, and so Jim happened to be there. Jim Henson and his wife Jane. And I was 17 at the time, and he was about, I think, 25.
Okay.
And his first daughter Lisa was in a carriage. I remember he didn't have a beard at that time, and he came and talked to me afterwards, and then he wanted to hire somebody while he was in Washington, D.C. He had a television show there. But he hired, I was 17, I was still in high school. He hired a dear friend of mine, Jerry Jewell, who became the head writer of the Muppets.
Yeah.
He's passed away since. And when I became 19, I actually said to myself, okay, I'm stopping the puppets, I want to be a journalist. And I went to school for about 6 months at Oakland City College, because I wasn't smart enough in math to go to Cal with my friends. And then Jim asked me to come out and try for 6 months with the Muppets, and I stayed with them ever since.
And the fascinating thing I've heard you talk about him is he took away the proscenium, and he made these puppets interchangeable. Can you explain exactly what that means?
Yeah, I guess I don't know, for those of you who don't know puppets or don't care, it may be boring of you, but nevertheless. Prior to Jim, there were puppets on television like Bill Baird and Bert Tillstrom and Kuka Fran and all that. But they had a proscenium, and then the television camera shot the proscenium. So essentially there was the frame of the television, and inside the frame of the television was another frame, which was the physical frame the puppeteers worked the puppets. So what Jim did is he took away the center one, and he used the frame of the television as the frame for the puppets. And that was entirely new. And what was also new that Jim did was he created lip sync that was very, very precise. Before that, it was, you know, lip sync, they could be like that, basically. But because he worked in television, he had to accommodate the close-up. And when you have a close-up, he realized he had to be much more specific because you're close. So the close-up caused that specificity of lip sync. And the third thing you were talking about is usually puppets used to be, in a way, they'd be princes and witches, and that's who they'd be.
Yeah.
That's it. But Jim just made these kind of faces, and then he double-faced noses and eyes and changed them all over, so one shape could be any different kind of characters. And Jim kind of exploded puppetry.
Yeah, and I heard you also mention that Kermit wasn't necessarily a frog, per se.
No, Kermit was just a creature. He was just a creature, and it was only when we started in television that I think the label The Frog just came out. I've forgotten how.
Wow. And these characters, I mean, Fozzie Bear, Miss Piggy, Sandy Eagle, we could go on, Animal, Grover, Bert. We talked a little bit about it at lunch, and you've changed our lives with these characters. And I don't mean that amazing, and I don't know how he was a person that has been a part of all this, that, as you said, it was just a gig. And then all of a sudden it becomes this...
Yeah, I was a performer. I was Jim's main performer, and so, you know, I never, you can't think that it's going to happen like this. You just don't. You just put your nose to the grindstone and you work every day. And you work hard and you have a lot of fun. That's when Jim taught me. Jim taught me that you can work like hell, but still have a lot of fun, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So as James said, when Sesame Street, for instance, came out, we did a pilot, and we thought, okay, that was fun. Now, who knew it was going to go on for so long? And you know, I want to say something here about you talking about all my characters, which I'm proud of.
Sure.
But you know, I'm up here, and I'm getting all the credit here, but no one works in a vacuum.
Right.
You know, my characters would never be the way they are if I didn't work with my fellow performers' characters. That's when one finds a character, when one plays off another character. If I was just alone, and I would be lost. I couldn't create a character as lasting. So, you know, the other performers, in Richie Hunt, who passed away, who did Beaker and everything else, and Jerry Nelson passed away recently, and he did Floyd and so many others, and the costumers and the workshop people, and we have Dave Goldstill and all these people. You know, I'm here getting credit, but all these people are the ones who really should also be up here with me on the stage. And of course, the one person more than anything else is Jim. Jim is the one who gave me all the opportunities and all the support. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Jim. You know.
Well, you know, he credited you as one of the main reasons The Muppet Show was funny. And
but he had no sense of humor. I can say that because, you know, I love him.
Yeah, and were the two of you opposites from each other?
Totally opposite.
Yeah.
This is why Bert and Ernie worked so well.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, before Sesame Street started, the first show, you know, we had these two characters, and I'm not quite sure where the names Bert and Ernie came from.
Oh, really? I was going to ask.
Yeah, I don't know. People thought they came from a movie and things. I don't recall.
Okay.
But I know that when you, in the beginning, when you started with a character, you'd work in front of a mirror. Nowadays, or, you know, that was before the video was accessible. And so Jim and I were working in front of a mirror, and he first tried Bert, and then I tried Ernie, and we played around, and it just wasn't working. And then I tried Bert, and he tried Ernie, and it started to gel a little bit. And I think it's partly because, as you say, Jim was this extraordinary human being who went with the flow. He was the strongest man I've ever met in my life. Strong in character and physically strong for what he said. But his character as a human being was just, he never just fought against things. So for Ernie, he was very playful, and he did that. Me, I was neurotic. I fought against up the current, and Bert was more that way for me. So,
were you the straight man usually?
I was the straight man
in the group always then, or was it?
I was a straight man with Bert, but when I did Piggy, Kermit was the straight man.
Yeah, so it was flip flop. But in real life, when it was the two of you, were you the straight man usually?
No, I don't think we had a straight man. If anything, I was the instigator there. But in Bert and Ernie, Jim was the instigator.
Yeah.
Jim really loved playing, and that's where he got his best work done, by playing. One thing about Bert, though, is Ernie has hands. He has two hands. One hand works with somebody else, and so Jim had a lot of fun that way. I had Bert, and he was a stick. All he could do is that, and arm on a stick, and how I got Bert's character was that I just couldn't get a character for him. It took forever in the first year because he was so boring. He was just doing this, and I realized, okay, boring. That's his character.
That is his thing.
So his favorite color is gray. His favorite dish is oatmeal. No, nothing with that. One of his hobbies, besides bottle caps and everything, is checking the tributaries of various rivers around the world.
Oh, really? Yes.
So I made it as boring as possible, and so that's how Bert came about.
They really, though, they captivate us. They change our lives. It's so many of us grew up with them. And I've got to touch on Cookie Monster, of course, but Grover, I think, is just. If nothing else, this is cheap applause for you. I'm just going to say these characters, and they'll applaud, and you can just feel the love of that. But I think it's so true what you say. It's certainly the case in animation as well, that there's a whole group of people creating this.
They really should be on stage with me here.
But they are with what you do, because we see it, we appreciate it. And the question I'm also wondering about is, how did you come into contact with George Lucas? Was that through Jim as well then?
Yeah, we were doing the Muppet movie in Los Angeles. And Gary Kurtz came to Jim, I believe, and asked him through George to do Yoda. And Jim realized two things. First of all, he was the head of a company. He didn't have time to do that. But also he realized he had weaknesses and strengths. I have weaknesses and strengths. And one of my strengths was more the dramatic performance.
Sure.
And so he suggested me. And as a result, I was in the trailer with Jim and Gary Kurtz. And they showed me, in my trailer, and they showed me a book of designs for Yoda. And it's not the Yoda you see now. There's different kinds of Yoda, but there's one photo that somehow got to me. Sometimes characters like Bert take a long time to get. And sometimes things like Yoda, I got them. I have no idea why. There's one particular design, and this design was very close to what Stuart Freeborn made. So that's how I got to know George.
Did you know that this character was going to be this kind of wise sage, and did that connect with you, or was that like, I've got to search for this?
I think what connected, yes, I did, because the script had him that way. George and Larry Kasdan wrote Empire Strikes Back, and that's where Yoda came in first. So I knew what he would be. What I loved about it, I love opposites. And I love the fact that this little character was so powerful, and he was not unlike a Zen master, and yet if he saw the last candy at the plate, he wanted it. I love big, powerful people with little petty things. I love that opposite, and so I saw that in him, and I think that's how it started with him and R2, the little fight they have in Empire.
Yeah.
And I think that was written, and I love that. So I did know that, yes.
Yeah, and Lawrence Kasdan and George Lucas, they invented this character, but you really were able to take it and you created kind of a Bible for the character, a backstory to it.
Yeah, what I did, again, here I am for Yoda, but Stuart Freeborn made Yoda with the help of Jim Henson, and because George and Jim both, wanted to work together, and so Jim wanted some information from George to help, and George needed a little help from Jim on Yoda, so that helped, but Stuart Freeborn did make Yoda.
And Freeborn, forgive me for interrupting, Freeborn combined his own face with somebody else.
I don't know.
I was told it's Einstein and him, that if you look
Really?
at the face, it actually does look
Stuart did look like Yoda. He
Yeah.
really did. He really did. Yeah. And
But that backwards talk, that speak, was that in the script originally, or
that was in the script,
Okay.
but only half. He would talk and then he would be colloquial.
Okay.
And I asked George, I said, can I go all the way with that? Because I really think that's good. And he said, sure. And I remember, George doesn't give a lot of direction. He knows exactly what he wants. And the way George and I work is I give him like 10 things and he chooses one. But I remember in the canteen at Elstree, which is a town where the Star Wars stage was built, and that's where we shot Empire. We were in the canteen, cafeteria, and I hadn't known George hardly at all. I said maybe 2 words to him. And I walked over and I said, and I never talked about him about Yoda. Never said 2 words to him about Yoda. So he didn't tell me what he wanted. So, being a director, I know actors always come to you and say, what do you want? So, as an actor, I came to George and I said, at the canteen, I said, excuse me, George, what is it? Tell me what you want out of Yoda. And he says, Frank, just make it wonderful.
Check. Yeah. You did it. So, he also then did not initially pick you. I don't know if everybody knows this, as the voice of Yoda.
No, he didn't pick me as the voice. As a matter of fact, I think, part of the thing is I do so many voices, and I don't do voices, I do characters, but nevertheless, I think that was a concern for him. Also, I think being an old man, I think he didn't want to be a cartoony kind of old man.
Sure.
For whatever reasons. In any case, I gave him a little voice tape, and he, and then I think for 6 months he was auditioning other people for Yoda.
So when you were on set doing it, were you doing the voice that we know now?
I was on set doing a voice. Well, when you're on set, when I'm doing Yoda, it's such a challenge to do him. All my energy goes into the physicality of him.
Yeah.
So when I did the voice, I knew I couldn't do both the voice and the physicality. It's just too much focus.
Yeah.
So what we did is what we call a scratch track, which means they recorded my voice, which was not really Yoda at that time, but it was a template that I could use a year later when I actually did record the voice. But even at that point, the scratch track, I think, was not Yoda.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, what I did do is I studied old men's voices for a while.
Really?
Yeah, and then I gave that tape to George. And after about 6 months or whatever it is, I knew George was looping, and I was on my honeymoon with my previous wife. My wife now, who I love dearly, and she's a wonderful lady too, my previous wife. But we were on honeymoon in the Kahala Hilton Hotel, and I got a call saying, not from George, but somebody said, Frank, maybe I think we would like you for the voice afterwards. Could you come to Los Angeles? I said, I was on my honeymoon. I flew to LA, and they made up for my honeymoon. And I'm very, very pleased because I've always done my own characters in total.
Yeah.
So except for 2, which is in Dark Crystal, where I did Aughra physically and I did the Chamberlain physically. But Billy the Whitelaw did Aughra, she was brilliant, and I forgot who else did the Chamberlain. Yeah, she passed away. But I'm used to kind of doing the whole thing myself, so I was very happy that he wanted that.
Absolutely. And there's another one that, by the way, we'll go off on a tangent here for a second, but one of my favorites, and it's at our house every Christmas, Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. Yeah. I don't know if everybody knows that you were Emmett's was.
I was Emmett's mom physically.
Physically, yes.
But we had to have a real Marilyn Sokol had a beautiful voice.
Yes.
I was the head for voice and the physically of the leader of the gang.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but that was just wonderful. And Paul Williams wrote the most beautiful.
Yeah, that was awesome
beautiful,
stuff. So that is a Christmas favorite for us, but I just needed to
Thank you.
selfishly do that right now.
Thank you.
Just to pull tension over to me again, you see, Frank. That's the way it works every once in a while. But so you're on set, and Mark Hamill has talked about this many times. He had you in his ear, and then every once in a while, the radio frequencies would come in, and he'd get like the Rolling Stones singing instead of Yoda. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
But he also talked about the fact that this character came to life with the little nuances. The leg coming up over when he's getting up on the rocks and things. And it's all of those things that without you, he was saying, it wouldn't have happened the same way. Where is your perspective of that? You're underneath the sets.
Well, let me say one thing about that is that, the key to Yoda is struggle. He's very, very old, and he's struggling. And he's struggling in many, many ways. He's struggling, first of all, physically, to be able to stay alive, to help the Jedi. He's struggling with the language, because the language he speaks is how the original Jedi spoke, as far as I'm concerned. As opposed to these surfer dudes who are talking about it. That's my interpretation of it. So he's really trying to keep that language alive. He's trying to keep the Jedi around him at a particular level alive.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff. So struggle is important for him.
Okay.
But let me say something about Mark. Is that remember I said you don't work in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Now, Yoda would never have been as good if Mark didn't believe in him in Dagobah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mark needed to actually connect with Yoda. And that's not easy to connect with something that's not flesh and blood. And so Mark deserves a lot of credit for making Yoda come alive because he believed in him and really gave, when an actor you give and take, and he did that. So Yoda would never have been as successful and as soulful if it wasn't for Mark.
Well, the fascinating thing is the sign of two very humble men is you both say the same thing about each other in that, and so it's great. So that is wonderful to hear. And that was very much a solitude, too. It was just basically the two of you on set with the crew.
Right.
You didn't have Harrison and Carrie and all of them. Now, did you get to see them at all during the
Sure.
shoot?
Oh, sure. I got to see all those guys when we were doing press. It was fun.
Yeah, okay.
It was fun.
And then you come back for
And
Jedi.
again, also I saw him, on the other movies I saw him too.
Yeah, that's okay. So I was going to say, in Jedi you come back, and was it different working with a different director? Because Kershner, when we haven't talked about Kershner, there's so much to talk about, but Irving Kershner, who directed.
Kirsch was another key component of Yoda. What happened? All these people, Yoda costume was made by people. Yoda was made by Stuart Freeborn. Yoda was designed by somebody. Yoda was written by Larry and George. All these people, and all I did was put it together. Okay, I just made it alive, and I didn't just make it. I didn't want it to be. If I did a good performance or even a great performance, it wouldn't have been enough. I had to make a transcendent performance, so you don't see him as a puppet.
Yeah.
That was the key thing for me. But I was one fortunate enough to be able to bring him to life. And I got off the subject. You were saying.
Oh, well, we were talking about Kershner and his direction.
Kershner was a very key person in that.
Yeah.
Although when Kersh is so funny. When I was working Yoda, Dagobah was about 4.5 feet, 5 feet lifted off the ground, the entire set. In part for the water, but in part for me because I was underneath, and I was working Yoda underneath, and I remember Kersh was giving directions. He's giving directions to Yoda, and I'm shouting, "Kersh, I'm down here. It's me." But Kersh was a very important part of Yoda too.
Well, and again, that also goes to talk about the importance of that character being believable and how he was even on set right there. So that is fantastic. And then he becomes a CG creation. Well, now in the prequels, in episode 1, he was again a puppet. but now he's since been replaced with CG. Do you have any feelings one way or another as like how you prefer to do him? Obviously, I would think you prefer him as a puppet.
I prefer him whatever's necessary for the story.
See, that's great. Yeah.
And when Yoda had to do battle, and that was the story, there's no way in God's earth it could be a puppet. I mean, you see him jumping around. There's no way, and it wouldn't have been as powerful. So George had to follow the story. I mean, you have a story, you've got to be true to it. And that's the only way in which you can be true to it. So I was supportive of that, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I support the story, whatever is necessary.
It's beautiful. Do you find it different? I mean, so often you go back into loop and you're doing voice work, much like I do then in the studio. Is that a lot different than when you're actually performing it, though, as opposed to when you're just in there?
Oh yeah, I can concentrate only on the voice then, and I'm I'm frame specific there, just like you are, and it's much easier for me because I'm not thinking about all the other physical things I've got to deal with. So I just deal only with what I see on the screen and just the voice, and also people, I don't know if you guys are film people, but people say, oh, looping takes away the spontaneity, and I disagree. I think the opposite. I think you can do a lot more with looping, much more opportunities to be spontaneous and alive and richer with looping.
I agree, but I'm biased as well. So, there's so many different things we can cover, and again,
By the way, looping means
Yeah.
which means additional dialogue recording is ADR, which means once you shoot a character or a person, sometimes the sound isn't good, or the person's voice isn't right, or has a cold, so you go in months later and they show the performance on the screen, and then you say the dialogue in a mic and put the new voice on the screen. It's called looping because at one point the film was on a loop.
Yes.
And they did it.
Thank you, sir, for that bit of information. It's as though you're a director and you like things. See the segue? I'm a master of the segue, Frank. Master of the segue. And I don't mean that little writing thing. As a director, you have directed some really awesome things. And it started co-directing, but you kind of say, well, I didn't really co-direct it. That was Jim. Dark Crystal was your first directing job for film?
Yeah. And here's the truth, okay? I helped Jim direct his movie. I co-directed because Jim didn't give a damn about titles. All he cared about was quality. And I'll never forget this, because actually I wanted to be a director always, theater director really, but I gave myself 10 years to be a director. I said I wanted to get, and so I learned as much as I possibly could, but before that time, 10 years was up, Jim, we were on a flight to London, and Jim had already been working on the Dark Crystal, the characters, costumes, everything, for about a year and a half. And I had not been involved hardly at all. And we went to London. I think I was going to work with him on that. And he said, in Jim's quiet way, he said, Frank, you want to direct this with me? And I said, Jim, I never directed it. This is huge. I never directed anything like this before. But I mean, why me? And this is Jim. He says, because I think it would be better. And all he cared about was the quality. He knew that he had some weak areas that I could shoulder, that I could fill. And all he cared about was the quality of the work. He didn't care about the credit. And so that's the kind of guy Jim was.
That is fantastic. And you were inspired by, was it A Touch of Evil as well?
I'm sorry?
A Touch of Evil, the film?
I was inspired by that.
By that as a director as well.
Oh my God,
so you knew
That Touch of Evil is a stunning film.
And so, as a director, do you enjoy comedy more than drama? Because primarily you're directing comedies.
Primarily, yeah.
And why is comedy important to you? Because it seems to be such a
for some reason, I like bringing things to life.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Each of us in our lives have one thing that we're here for, and for me, I bring things to life. That means I bring a puppet to life. I bring a movie to life. I bring a moment to life. I enjoy that. I enjoy when I talk to somebody. I don't like being normal. What I do in a hotel is awful, but I can't stand just being normal. I want to bring more life. So when you check out, the desk says, "Did you have a nice visit?" And I said, "No, this is a hellhole. I'll never come back here again."
Oh.
And what happens is they're realizing, and then when it's a joke, I realize they brought them to life a little bit. Forgot, they hear the same old thing over and over.
Have you had a good time here?
Huh?
Have you had a good time?
Anyway, that's what I do, and I think again I lost the focus at the end.
Oh, that's all right. I didn't have any focus anyway. Little Shop of Horrors. Let's just go through things. I'm going to say words. It's going to sound impressive. Again, they'll applaud, and then you can comment if you'd like. Little Shop of Horrors. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Who, by the way, we have a little 6 degrees of connection here. Ian McDiarmid, who of course played the Emperor, who you fought, Yoda fought in Revenge of the Sith.
No, I didn't. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you guys had a little battle, and then was that pretty much how it was on the set with him? 'Cause
Yeah.
he's different, right? He's a
In Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, I don't know if you know, but I had met Ian years before that, working with before he became the Emperor, and I shot in the south of France with Steve Martin and Glenn Headley and Michael Caine, and I hired Ian as Michael Caine's butler. So I knew Ian before, and I remember saying to Ian, he's so brilliant. I said to him when he was doing the butler, I said, "I am so underusing your talent."
you got
But he was wonderful.
Yeah, and then I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't mention In and Out, Bowfinger, Death at a Funeral. These are just fantastic films, and there's so much to cover. I'm so glad that we get to talk more over the course of the next few days.
I remember what you asked about the comedy. The answer is, for some reason, comedy brings things more to life, and also more serious things could be said about with comedy.
Yes.
And I like things that are a bit subversive, and the best way to bring that up is to be funny, because that's not as threatening. Although I love dramas too,
Okay. All right.
I remember that question. It's pretty good, right?
That was very good. I'm impressed. Hey, you're also a voice in the new Inside Out, right? The new Pixar film.
Two lines.
That's
Well, Pete Docter is a dear friend of ours. He's a director of Up and Monsters Inc. So he just asked me and Dave Goelz. Now Dave Goelz does Gonzo and Bunsen Honeydew and Zoot and everything. So Dave and I have been friends, and we clown around for 35 years. Knowing that, because Dave's a friend of Pete's, he just brought us in the studio. We ad-libbed for about 2 hours, and we had a ball. And he just took a few lines, but I am so undeserving of being in that movie.
I think we're undeserving here of all this time you've given us. We are so grateful, Frank Oz, for your time. Is there anything you would like to say to all these beautiful people here before we finish?
That surprises me. I just want to thank them for coming. I mean, that's, were you guys in the parade at all? Anybody see anything? It was weird because I can't stop and talk to you guys. I can't stop and autograph. I can't do it because then it's just too much. But when I see the kids, I see myself, because I was in the audience in the parade when at my age it was Hopalong Cassidy, a big Cabo star, and I was in the audience there and watched him go by, and I was thinking, if I could only have his autograph, only if I. And so, and same thing when my dad brought us to the 49ers games or the Raiders games, I want to go down there and get the autographs of the players. So when I see kids in there, I see me, and so it hurts me not to be able to do anything, but I can't.
Well, I think we appreciate you just the way you are. Ladies and gentlemen, please, Mr. Frank Oz.